The question of the day: what is better, being or becoming? This is the topic I have for you today, and the reason I mention that is because I truly believe the past, present, and future, which obviously being is existence in the present, becoming kinda is in the present, kind of in the future, and I believe those are all three are relatively the same, and I'll explain it here in a second. If you do not know who I am, my name is Champ, and I help men build their foundation of winning. That's pretty much it. And so for today, I'm going to be discussing this topic. If you have any questions or comments, make sure to go and leave them in the comments, live comment section for sure. And also make sure you go and follow me on Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, and on Spotify. We're going to get into it. All right. So there's two sets of advice, and I feel like one is more right than the other. So I've heard this, and I'm sure you've heard this advice in many different aspects. This can apply to a lot of different elements of life, but essentially the advice of just be yourself, right? And I heard most recently that in over my last few podcasts that I've done, I've been kind of hinting at this topic of being, becoming, having, not having, past, present, future. I've been hinting at all of these things, and what I've ultimately came down to is this: be yourself is wrong because it's state of being. It's a state of an existence right now, right, or even in the past, right, kind of in the past. But becoming is hinting at the future while also still being in the present, and I think that is the most that is the one of the greatest experiences of life. So I think I don't think necessarily be yourself is particularly wrong, but I think become yourself is better and more right, and I'll explain that for today, right? The foundation, the reason why I don't think be yourself is the most practical advice that one can give and one could receive is because most people either don't like themselves, so they're being, they don't even like it, or they don't know who they are or who they want to become, right? And that all has to do with the state of being. So with a lot of people not knowing or not being clear with these things when it comes to understanding their own self-actualization, I think it's very, very hard for people to really understand what that truly means. Be yourself, when somebody says, "Hey, be yourself," is assuming that they want, or that they want to be who they are right now, right? Or that they even know exactly who they are right now. And like I said, I would say most people, if it's very, very hard, and most people are not willing to admit it, but most people aren't who they want to be. They aren't doing what they want to do, and they just don't understand themselves. And I understand that. So become yourself is better is because you're in a different process, I'd say, right? And the reason I say that is because when you're becoming, or let's frame it like this, right? The process of becoming is the greatest existence because you're in a state of potential in motion. There's something that can be uh can be your being, your future being, if that makes any sense. But what I mean by that is this, right? If you're in a state of potential in motion, there's just nothing but potential in the moment. So for example, I'll give you a very, very small example that I think embodies this, right? I think it's much more of a satisfying existence when you're in the state of being, or in the state of becoming, right? So let's just say you're playing a game, right? Do you enjoy winning the game truly as much as you say you do, or do you enjoy playing the game? And I'd say more often than not, of course, everyone likes to win, but quite frankly, you need to be able to put yourself in a position to win. That becoming a winner, becoming whatever, right? I think that is where the most satisfaction of life truly comes. And yes, of course, people will always want to be like, "Oh, I want to win," or I want to accomplish this goal." But at the end of the day, what you're really going to value, and this is something that I've analyzed within my own self and analyzed within so many people who have won in their lives, is they value the journey that it took, not necessarily the destination, right? It's this quote that I heard Big Sean say in a song one time. He said, "It's not about the trophy; it's about what it took to grab it." Right, and what it took to grab it is essentially you in this state of becoming, right? If you won, which is being the champion, right? And yeah, you're basically in a state of being, if that makes any sense, right? And in this state of being can be good only if you're becoming something that is worthy of being, if that makes any sense, right? So that is what I would stress on today's episode, right? When you really take in that advice and try to understand what that means, you have to understand that it's coming from an angle of essentially being in the present while also being in the past. When, like I had mentioned, right, becoming is staying in the future or staying in the present, but also opening your eyes to see what the future can hold in this moment right now, right? So, yes, I believe it is better advice for you to become yourself, right? To be able to be in a position where you're figuring out who you want to be, and more importantly, the reasons why you want to be the ways in which you want to be. And obviously, right, you need to just figure out how to get it done, how to be in this state of becoming your own ideal, right? And I think people best shape their version of ideal by observing other people, right? I feel like, me personally, I've been able to become myself by understanding what I want, right? And the way that I discovered what I want is because I looked around and used I used my observer's eye to be able to begin to understand that there are certain people that I want to be like and certain people I definitely don't want to be like. And with that being said, you take about 10 to 15 to 20 things of the things in which you want to be like, and that is how you should have that potential in motion, right? Is by trying to become these things that you set out for, whether they're character traits or whether it's it's pretty much just character traits essentially, right? But I don't believe that being is the optimal state, right? Being is to assume a whole lot, but like I said, I do believe they play in tandem. But you must become. You must become. You must be in a state of becoming. Right now, when I'm doing this podcast, it's almost referring to the example that I used earlier. I'm in a state of potential in motion right now as I speak. Right? It's the same with the example that I use when you're in a potential game when you can win. But playing the game is when you're becoming. And like I had mentioned, becoming and learning what to become is the first state of self-actualization. And when you begin to understand what self-actualization actually is, it begins to it becomes a lot more clear, at least to me personally. And I'll go and explain what self-actualization is if you don't know, if you don't understand, or maybe you want to hear it verbally spoken, right? Self-actualization is the process of realizing and fulfilling one's potential, leading to a more meaningful life. It involves personal growth, self-awareness, pursuing authenticity, creativity, as well as purpose, right? Figuring those all out for yourself is the state of being. It is not the state, or is the state of becoming. It's not the state of being, right? Being suggests it has a tone of presence and a tone of past, right? Becoming has and I keep reiterating this because I believe it's that important, right? Becoming is a state of present and also a state of the future. So when people say become yourself, you only want to, or when people say be yourself, hopefully it's something, hopefully you're worth something that's worth being, right? And that's only going to come at the cost of being in a state of becoming. So I'm not saying don't appreciate where you are right now. What I am saying is hopefully you're in the process of creating somebody worth being, and worth truly appreciating, and worth the gratitude, and worth all of those things that we all want to embody. And I think the only way you do that is by being in a constant state of becoming, right? Is when you're on this. It's what Jordan Peterson calls when you're on the border between order and chaos, where you don't know necessarily what's going to happen next. Something great can happen, or something absolutely terrible can happen, but here's the thing, at least at the very end, you will be something, but it's more fun to become that something, if that makes any sense. So, yes, that's what I will say, right? And I think at the end of the day, being or becoming, right? It doesn't matter any way you slice it, right? I think at the end of the day, the alternative to not be in a state of either, or I think to be in a state of be yourself, people can also get so they can lose track of their own self actualization in this state of being, right? When people are in the state of being, they're ultra they're ultra present, right? And this could be potentially good because you could be doing or being something or becoming something worth being. Or you could also not become something worth being, right? By you just being, right? You just being, you leave that potential of negativity to exist. And that is why I say you need to focus on becoming, and hopefully becoming something that's worth the effort, that's worth the struggle, that's worth the sacrifice, that is going to correctly aim you in the right direction that you need to go in life. I think that's absolutely of the most importance. So becoming yourself is a journey of gradual and intentional development, right? And that is when I believe everyone is the most satisfied. That is when I believe everyone is the most enthralled with life. Is when they're in that journey of gradual and intentional development. So, where do you find yourself in right now? I'm going to ask you this question. You watching this, hopefully, you believe that you're in a state of becoming, right? After this podcast, hopefully, you're in a state of becoming. At least most of your day, I believe, should be spent in the state of becoming. I think if you want to live a great life, that is what it's going to take. Not necessarily focusing on the being. Of course, there's going to be plenty of time where you're going to be the being, right? Maybe this is just you laying in bed. You're just existing. You're just being. You see what I'm saying? But most of your day should be going out there and trying to earn something, trying to build something, trying to grow, trying to become something. That's what I truly believe. So, people only feel it's worth it to be themselves when they became something worth being. And hopefully you right now watching this, you're taking this serious and you're saying, "Well, am I existing in the state of being, or am I mostly existing in the state of becoming?" And with this being said, I mentioned earlier in the podcast the confusion and the lack of clarity that a lot of people have when it comes to being themselves. So, hopefully some of the things that I mentioned on today's episode are hopefully they've helped you when it comes to trying to seek more clarity, right? I'm going to reiterate these because I believe they're that important, right? You must figure out who you want to be like, right? Observe people. Say, okay, I see this guy. He looks like he's successful, right? Whatever that looks like to you, right? Define your own definition of success. So let's just say he looks successful. So let's just say that's going to be he's in good shape and he has a lot of social status, right? Then you must ask yourself, okay, so that's who I want to be like. Now, is that even worth becoming? Ask yourself the question, why do I want to be that way? Is it worth becoming? What are the potential goods? What are the potential bads? Is it worth it in the end? Is it truly worth it? And once you figure that out, now you have to figure out how to execute. How is that practically going to be you? If you're looking at it and it's so far away, but yet it's something you believe worth taking the journey to become, then obviously you need to figure out how you're going to get there specifically. So write it down. Okay, just observe, right? And just think. And I feel like most people just don't do this thinking, right? Okay, this guy is this specific way for this specific reason. How did he get there? What are the actual reasoning for him being there, right? How did he get there? People don't ask enough questions, I believe. And I only recognize that because I've asked myself so many questions, and I can visibly observe other people and be like, okay, you just probably haven't spent that much amount of time thinking about these specific things, right? You haven't spent enough time in the state of actually becoming something that is worth it to you, not to me, but worth it to you. And the second you have that much clarity with yourself, like I said, through that self-actualization is the second you're going to be in that state of becoming. And like I mentioned, I believe it is a much more fulfilling existence to be in the state of becoming. And it does sound kind of contradictory because you must be asking, and this is something that I had asked myself as well, right? Then when is it really going to be, when are you going to be worth being? And that's an entirely different thing. But at the end of the day, I believe you're only worth being after you became something that you wanted to become. Because outside of that, if you're just being, like I said, you leave the door open for negativity, right? You could fall into the trap of playing a role in this game of life that you're told to play, right? And you might just fall into this programming that exists that maybe isn't even within your best interest, but you're in a state of only being. So maybe you're only going to become what everyone else wants you to be, and that maybe not even what you want to be yourself. Or maybe you don't even know what you want to be. So by default, you're already becoming something you don't want to be. So it's when you're in the state of being, simply only being, right? Like I mentioned, keeping the door open for negativity. You're essentially being in a state where you're vulnerable to others' negative output, right? And the only reason I say that is because I see a lot of people that are just being themselves, and they leave themselves vulnerable to the judgment of others by truly believing exactly what they say. And if you have this level of if you've achieved more self actualization through all the things that I've discussed, right? Through figuring out your purpose, um, to giving your life a meaning, right? To involve yourself within personal growth, then I believe that you're not going to really hear out or believe what others have to say about you because you know yourself well enough to understand whether this person is lying about you or not. And I think there's something to be said about that. So for me, for example, I've spent enough time working on myself to be in a position where if somebody says something about me, I can easily say, "Hey, that's not me," because I know who I am. Because I've taken the time and I've stayed in the state of becoming more than I have stayed in the state of just being. So, hopefully you can say the same thing. Because if you can't, you're going to have to deal with the consequences of just being. Just being, in my opinion, isn't good enough. Because there's so much out there that I can become, that I'm striving towards becoming. And like I said, it is enjoyment in the becoming that is the greatest paramount of life in general. So I feel like some people will say just just become yourself, or yeah, essentially become yourself, right? People will say maybe that's lacking authenticity, but I would say you striving towards what you want in this life is the highest form of authenticity that does exist, as long as it's not guided or too heavily influenced by others around you, right? I feel like for myself, I have these aims regardless of what anyone really says in my life, regardless of what anyone stays in my life or not. I'm going to do what I set out to do. I have a purpose, and to fulfill this purpose, it looks like going down and enjoying the journey of becoming. That is, to me, now that I know that about myself, it's going to put me in a better position. You see what I'm saying? So the second you can find these things out for yourself and just be in the state of becoming, you're going to be in a much favorable position, right? Like I said, you're never going to lose. I'm not going to say you're never going to lose. You're going to find yourself in a more confident, comfortable state within yourself. And not to say that it completely closes the door on any negativity that can come, or rather lack of confidence that can come in this existence of life. But what I am saying is you're saving yourself from a lot of negative that can exist, that does exist, that you can observably see exist in other people's lives. And if you want to be more than just an average person, I would recommend you stay in this state, majority of the time, in this state of becoming. Become yourself. That is better. That is more right. Become yourself. Don't just be yourself, because sometimes ourselves, if we're being honest, aren't good enough. And that's just what it is. Become yourself, right? Become it's this I guess this is kind of hinting at the same thing. This is where I believe they intersect, right? I've heard this mantra before where it says, "Be him in order to become him," right? And the only way that you can be him is if you understand what him in this mantra actually looks like. The second you can define that for yourself, and it's going to look and should look different for every single person, is the second that you actually have a goal. Is the second that you can actually start being in this state of becoming, the state of potential in motion. If you're in that, I think that is the most enjoyable part of life in general. It's not getting to where you're going. It's enjoying where you're going, regardless. Is to be is trusting yourself, right? This is I heard something the other day. You're not waiting to be who you want to become. You're trusting that you're becoming who you want to be. I think that is the greatest differentiator between the good and the great. Is simply some people are going to enjoy walking, right? We all have a goal, or let's just say we all want to run the marathon, but here's the thing, there's some people that just love running. And regardless of what place they come in, they won because they knew themselves enough to be able to understand that the journey is truly worth everything. And without the journey, you're nothing. Without the journey, you can't have the destination. You can't have all the rewards of life. But like I said, I think people find the true reward in life exists in the becoming. It doesn't exist in the being. It doesn't, unfortunately, right? Because and it is kind of weird, and this is something that I mentioned on my last few podcasts, right? You would think, you're on this journey, right? You want to get to where you want to go. But it's funny that if you observe a lot of people who've gotten to where they want to go, they talk about how they got there instead of talking about being there. So, just some things for you to think about. I think these are things that are that need to be discussed. I think these things are very, very interesting. So, recognize that you can be much more than what you are right now. And with that being said, hopefully you're in this state of becoming, right? Put yourself in positions where you're in this state of becoming, and you better hope and pray that it's not something that is particularly negative or not in your best interest or not what you truly want. So, this is the harsh part of self-actualization, is understanding that you aren't exactly all that you could be, but truly believing that you can be exactly who you want to become in due time. So that's all I have to say for today's episode. Hopefully you enjoyed what I had to say. I'm going to be going live next Monday, as well as next Thursday will be the next episode. This was episode 236 of the Life of a Champ podcast, talking about why the advice of be yourself is terrible advice. A few things I want to say before I go end it off. Like I said, make sure you go follow me Twitch, TikTok, Rumble, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and welcome to the winning team. You guys have a good rest of your night.